Hi, good evening and welcome at Hebrews. And as Apostle Andre sometimes would jokingly say, it's not about she-brews or Hebrews or the brews they make. Yeah, Hebrews, I would really want to say, is one of my favorite books in the New Testament. I love the order. I love the depth, the fact that you have to dig deeper. It is surely a more difficult book to understand. I think next to Revelation, it's possibly the hardest book to understand. Yet, if you understand the structure and you understand what the author was trying to accomplish, then Hebrews is possibly in my mind, next to the book of Romans, the two most theologically directive, foundational books in the New Testament. Surely the Gospels is the writings and words of Jesus, and it lays the basis for our Christian walk, our daily lives. But when it comes to philosophy and thinking, and about how we think about life, how we think about how God wants to order the world, and what is most preeminent to Him, then the book Romans is a theological thesis, and then the book Hebrews is like two very important pillars in our understanding. And when we're going to dig into, and tonight I just want to lead an introduction into this book and give you a bit of a taste and a desire to really dig in. But the word better you will find 13 times in the book. And the main theme, I would guess, is really to show a better thesis, an axiom, against the whole backdrop of an ancient Jewish tradition and religious understanding. And that makes it a fundamental book, because from chapter to chapter, a logic thesis is built to explain that Jesus Christ is more preeminent, is a better way to understand God than the law, the prophets, the Moses, the temple, the priests, the sacrifices, the covenant, the blood, all the deep, profoundly central aspects of the Jewish faith is threatened, well, in a positive way, not threatened, but is exposed, if you will. It's revealed. It is methodically, there's a method. There's like you would do with academic thesis, is you build on one argument and the next, and trying to prove that Jesus is perfect theology. To put it in other words, if you take Jesus out of the New Testament faith, if you take it out of our religion, we have no religion. And Jesus, in a sense, really unreligious or de-religiousized, or there's a new word for you. He took religion out of religion. And therefore Christianity, according to Kierkegaard, is not, to follow Jesus is not a religion, it's a lifestyle, it's a movement. And so when Jesus got onto the scene, he threatened, first of all, the Jewish center of their faith, which is the temple. And you remember the story about where Jesus went into the temple and he made a whip, and he took out the money changers and the evil, injustice, and greed, where the priests obviously had a hand in this, because they would not have allowed the money changers to be in the building in the first place if they didn't get a cut of the money, and basically exploiting people for their religious fervor and their zeal. So people have a zeal for God, they need forgiveness, they need God, they want to come closer to God, and they're willing to pay any price. What they then did is, because the coinage for Jews was important, because a man's face could not be on the coin, as part of the Ten Commandments, that no human form or human figure and any formed figure could be made as an idol and be worshipped, and therefore the Jewish coin was a very particular coin, so they had to change whatever Roman Greek currencies they did have of the modern day into the more ancient temple tax currency. And it's like you would have today when you change currencies, you have percentages and so forth, and you take some of that money to do the exchange. Of course, they also exploited the fact that people had to bring their sacrifices, their lambs, their pigeons, and whatever they would bring to sacrifice for their sins. Was at huge cost and huge personal, to travel long distances with these animals and have them with you all the time. And, it would take sometimes weeks to finally arrive at the Jerusalem temple. And so basically they made the gospel, the religion, more convenient so that people could now buy their sacrifices at the temple and then come and bring the sacrifices. And Jesus, totally, he emptied this building as if he's the boss, as if he's the high priest. And of course he is. But at that time he was just a rabbi. He's not a priest. He's not part of the scribes, the Sanhedrin. He's not part of the religious order. He didn't go to the scribe school or Hebrew school, Levi, priest, none of that. Jesus was a carpenter. And yet we understood from Luke that at the age 12 he had better understanding of the scriptures and confounded or astounded the scholars of the day by the questions that he asked and the understanding he had, and that was at the age of 12. So Jesus threatened a religious system at its core. Remember, the Jerusalem temple is like taking, for us as Christianity, is taking the cross out of our faith. It's fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental to our faith. And the temple was the place of sacrifice, was the place of faith and religion. You had 7 feasts that all occurred in around the temple, of which 3 of those 7 feasts had to be every single Jew had to travel and come for those feasts to the temple. So for Jesus then to say that he's going to break down this magnificent temple, which we now knew was the temple that Herod built, and that was after the temple of, we all know, of Haggai and Zerubbabel and the post exile temple. And then of course we know the former one was of course the temple that Solomon built, and then we go back to the ark that Moses started. So the temple has a long tradition. It starts as a metaphor for Garden Eden temple. That's why big portions of the inner walling, if you will, had huge murals of trees and particular plants that you would find in a garden, depicting this perfect world order, a place of rule where God rules with humankind, like he did within Eden. He ruled the world. He brought order into the chaos, and he brought the safety of a place of ruling together with mankind, which is, of course, if you would relate that to any other religion, is unique. The Eden story is unique. If you look at all the other Greek, Roman, or pagan stories, the gods had the upper hand. They were always exploiting the humans for their own purpose and their selfish reasons and so forth. And so if you study these religions, all of them are trying to make sense of life and the normal things that pertains to life, like hunger and survival, and hierarchies, and who's the best and who's the fast and who controls, who has the power, who's the king, how does all these social orders work, how do we keep the balance between self-interest and common interest, and those two powers are constantly at war with one another. And all these questions, the questions about how do you do life the best way and sustainably the best way, meaning for 5, 6, 7 generations, that it will still continue to be best for everyone. And these questions have been plaguing humankind for hundreds of years. And the Jewish answer, of course, to that in the Eden story is that God, from the beginning, decided to live in fellowship with man in this garden that he created. And we all know that, of course, the garden is a mirror image of heaven. And then, therefore, when Jesus arrived on the scene saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand, he's basically saying that what God dreamt of from the beginning in Eden, tried to symbolize metaphorically and symbolically through the temple and all the service of the temple, depicting heaven, is now come. And here I am. And so when Jesus then said that he will break down this building and rebuild it in 3 days, this was the uttermost blasphemy, the most outrageous thing any person could have said. It is like Nietzsche, who said God is dead. I mean, it is the most controversial thing that he could have said in his time, and that's also the reason that he was then, for this very statement, was crucified. That's why the Jews were so angry. You don't touch our faith. And there's a story told that a couple of decades before Jesus arrived on the scene, even before Caesar or Nero, not Nero, it was the first Roman ruler, the great Caesar. I'm forgetting his name now for a moment. But anyway, they tried to conquer Jerusalem, and came up towards the temple, and about 1,000 youths came out of the Jerusalem city, and they laid their necks bare to the soldiers, the upcoming army. And by this act, they would then, for the period that they would do it, it's like a fast, they would not eat, and literally say, we give our lives, we will not fight with you, you can kill us right now, but you will not take our temple. That's the kind of zeal the Jews have around the temple. And if you don't believe me, well, you still see the zeal the Jews have for the portion of the temple that they still have to their possession, which is the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem right now. And you will see this absolute fundamental love that everything of their faith, their religion, their sacrifices, their forgiveness of sin, how they would do homage to their God for exchange for prosperity and childbearing and fertility and so forth, like you would have with all other gods and religions. So when Jesus threatened the temple, the building, which we all know Herod was building for his own personal gain to win favor with the Romans and, of course, the Jews as well, and the rich Jewish families. But he had a political agenda. So, of course, Jesus would come against this structure that how far this religion has moved away from the original intent that God had for it from the beginning for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses, and all the faith heroes that we know. So I want you to understand this, because this is fundamental before we even get into the book of Hebrews, is that when Jesus arrived, he literally called an old order obsolete, announcing a whole new order. And I have to emphasize that again. Jesus, in everything he did, he was making clear that you said this, I say this. You have been heard, this is the truth, or this is a version of understanding of how the world works, or how you should pray, or how you should live, or how you should look after your neighbor. And then Jesus offers a total radical solution opposite to that. And you will find this in the book of Hebrew, that this is literally from chapter to chapter explained in a systematic way, that Jesus is superior. Jesus is better. There's if you think about your forgiveness of sin, for instance, Jesus is a better method, is a better way, is more sustainable, it's more life-changing than the way of the law or the sacrifices or the high priest and so forth. Now, to give you just a little bit more background, when Jesus, for instance, would say things like Abba Father, of course, that close intimate, loving word. It's like saying God is my dada, it's my dad. Very intimate word, not coming out of Hebrew, but coming from Aramaic. So it's using a very common word of the time. Again, being so revolutionary that we as normal human beings, without any religious methods, steps, sacrifices, can receive forgiveness for our sins. And of course, Jesus did many of his healings by just saying, you are forgiven. For him, it was interchangeable to talk about healing someone and also forgiving their sins. Radical ideas. When Jesus said that the least of this new following, this new family, kingdom, order, nation, culture, world that he's building, that he's putting together, the least in this grouping of people will be greater than any of the great faith heroes, greater than John the Baptist, greater than Moses, David, all these wonderful people we read about. Again, extraordinary, revolutionary idea. Jesus would talk often about that by just believing in him, by just seeing him, by having your eyes open to see that this is God himself. Now, I remember I used this as a metaphor. Maybe it's a simple story, but if you think about a famous Ed Sheeran, for instance, has a music show, and you so wanted to be at a music show, so you saved the money. You don't have the money. It took you 2 or 3 months to get all the money together so that you could be at the concert. When you get to the concert, there's this rows and rows of people waiting to get in, and you just get yourself there, and you're just so excited. Well, I'm gonna get in, and and then they're pressing, and it's getting really hard, and the waiting takes long. And the next moment, Ed Sheeran comes out. People are making a noise. It's chaos, as they do, and he comes walking, and he literally comes walking up to you, and then he looks you in the eye, and he says, "Come with me." And then he takes you through all the gates and through all the restrictions, and there's levels of payment. The closer to the stage is more expensive and so forth. And he really takes you into the VIP area, and he does it all for free. He says, "I just want to do this because I love you and I like you." Now, that is what Jesus literally did. Jesus did that for each one of us, is that he totally went past all the rules and regulations and payments that we had to do. And he said, "I'll do the payment, and I'll allow you to come in, just follow me." Now, there may be some shortfalls to my metaphor, but I wanted to give you this thing that you really understand that the righteousness of the Old Testament, and we were going to get in great depth of this, but was based on works and methods and steps. And we all have this problem that we want to see God, and we want to experience his glory. We want to have forgiveness. We want to be healed of something that we need healing for. We need him to give us advice about life and directions. We need him to bless our work and to make us prosperous and so forth. And we want to be part of a grouping of people who believe they are doing what is right before God. All these religious reasons that we have for spirituality. And then Jesus comes and he says, "Well, I'm the sum total. I am the object, I'm the focus, I'm the vision, I'm the mission, I'm the method. I am it. If you see me, if you have me, if you know me, if you come and grow into the knowledge of who I am, then you have God directly, straight, no second hand, no middleman, no, you just get directly, fully Jesus." And then he offers this, again, another radical idea. He offers this family, this togetherness, this closeness and intimacy to everyone. In Jewish culture, you had to have the bloodline. You have to be part of the who's your father and from what tribe if you've been born and so forth. And if you try to become a Jew, I've just recently discovered this talking to a Jew, that he says Jews, they don't try to make proselytes. They don't try to convert the world to become Jews. And they actually don't want the world to become Jewish. They just say, if you want to become Jewish, you must prove yourself to us that you want to be a Jew, that you fundamentally see what Jewness is all about, and that you understand our values and the way we do life and we think about God and our approach about life. And only when you've proven yourselves to them, they will allow you to go through the most rules and regulations so that you can be accepted. So for Jesus to offer this, just like to the tax collectors, to the supreme tax collectors, I guess, to give forgiveness to an adulterer woman who has just been caught out in a sin and she hasn't even repented, she hasn't even said sorry, she's just lying there, and he says, I don't accuse you either, go and sin no more. Radical, guys, radical ideas. We seem to forget this. Jesus saying to the thief on a cross, we forget this was not a man on a cross, this was a thief. He was guilty of robbing people, and it was so severe that his punishment was death. So it was not some petty crime and taking something small. He was a serious criminal, and yet at the right time, he looked at Jesus and he believed that Jesus is the Messiah, and Jesus offered him heaven right there in a moment. He didn't even repent. He just saw Jesus as the Savior. And now, why is this important? Well, once you begin to study, and particularly the date of this book, which is around 60, 66, 67, it's just before the fall of Jerusalem. So by this time, a big split has already happened in the church where a lot of Christians are getting saved. And obviously the first Christian movement being anti-Jewish in some respects, in terms of all these rules and regulations, began to, you saw a lot of Jewish followers that would, like you will have the book of Galatians, for instance, that would, after Paul has converted these really rough guys. Remember now, the Gauls, the book Galatians, written to the area of the Gauls, is the obelix and asterix people of the ancient world. They were really some tough guys, and the Romans sought them as soldiers, because knowing that if they on your side, you're going to win the battle. And they were like, in Afrikaans we have rikkies, so they were the most severe, tough people. Now, you would never have converted these pagans from you think of the Vikings, they were rough guys. Now, you would never convert these people who totally live by their own will. They don't submit to anyone. They have their own social orders. They have their own gods. They have their own sacrifices and things. How would Paul even begin to share the gospel with them and do it from Judaism, circumcision and rules and regulations and sacrifices and high priests and temple taxes and all of this? He would have never converted them to the Jewish faith, but he did convert them to Jesus Christ. And of course, there was then this huge following of would say, serious Jews who grew up Jewish, who now begin to see the value of Jesus Christ. They believe the gospel. And therefore, the author of the book Hebrews, which we will get into detail who the author is, but the author basically gave the Jews, this is the audience for this book is obviously Jews, of course also Gentiles, but you had to understand Jewish ways, and in this book the Jewish ways and faith and how it works was explained in here's the better way. That what you've been expecting, that what you've been looking forward to was this, here's the better way. And therefore the book Hebrews is just so fundamentally important for us to understand, to get our heads around that Jesus never intended the Christian faith to become a religion, a set of rules and regulations. The rules is Jesus, the life is Jesus, the example is the standard, the highest order that we all attain to live by is God through Jesus Christ. And now just think on that for a moment. I mean, all faiths and all religions have their gods. And you have then priests and shamans and whatever they are that would then talk on behalf of this god. And they would come to the people and say, well, our understanding of the gods is that you should now sacrifice this and you should do it this way and we should build this temple or this shrine and follow these rules so that we can have good harvest and you can have babies and all this and this. Of course, all these priests and religious figures had to then show off that the gods are talking for them. So they all had their magic that they would perform that would astound their followers so that they will believe these religious figures that they are truly speaking on God's behalf. So, yeah, that's common. There's nothing new there. But when Jesus came, he introduced more than just talking on behalf of God. The first person who spoke as God. But then as he spoke like God, I mean, that's also not new. The Hitlers and Caesars all thought they were God and demanded people's worship. Well, that's real different. Here's a guy that says he's God and then serves people, love people, heal people. Not making empty promises like many of these kings and rulers do, is that worship me and I will look after you and I will do this and this and this for you. But they live in the most extraordinary wealth, personal gain, personal advantages and so forth. So here Jesus comes and he says, I'm God, but he does it in a humble way, a serving way. And then he speaks truths about the way God sees the world. The best way to live life. I mean, if you look at anything made, you have a handbook for that difficult robot that you are making, or car or vehicle, and therefore you need to look at the handbook to use it. Now the same is that this life is hard, life is difficult. It's difficult to figure things out on how life works because life is so unpredictable, and the moment you get a set of rules or ways of doing life, then life changes and history changes and politics change and economies change and so forth, and then it leaves you again in this empty space. So how does you figure this world out? Jesus didn't say much, didn't write books, didn't leave buildings, didn't leave anything physically behind. His words, if you take all the red letters in the New Testament that Jesus directly would speak, and you would count them, take all the double versions that are copied from the one author to the other, you take that away, you can possibly read all the words of Jesus in around 4 to 5 hours. So Jesus didn't say much, yet those very few words were so profound. The ideas behind these words were so revolutionary that 2,000 years later, it still rings true. For instance, if you want to follow me, deny self, take up your cross and follow me. Again, different faiths would say that altruism and total selflessness is possibly the highest form of spirituality. If you truly want to be a spiritual person that lives a life of spiritual value, you become a giving, sharing, abandoning of self, self-forgetting person, and you become empty and void of self. If you think about it, these kind of people are also the most pleasant people to be around with, compared to these people who did call themselves God, but were so self-conscious or empowering and endearing and difficult and egotistical, and everything is about them. And they, and there's books now written about this, that ego has possibly brought more harm to the world than the devil could have ever done. The ego of man, this jealous, prideful, envious, vengeful human being that can turn against everyone in a moment. And here Jesus comes, and he's the best example of what human means, the best example of human. And he does it in word, but he does it also in example. And that's why even today still, if you are even outside of the Christian faith, many philosophers and so forth who reject the Christian representation of Christ, but they can't reject Jesus. There's not another historic figure that ever lived and walked on the earth that have had so much impact than Jesus, the man of Nazareth, the Son of God. This Jesus, the most preeminent, this is what the book is about, the preeminence of Jesus. He is God's preeminent solution to your marriage. He is the preeminent solution to your finances. And again, if you think, just again, take every sentence and think about it for a moment. If you think about the best way to run a business, isn't the best way to run a business to be giving and sharing and to make sure that everyone wins through your business and that not just you but also your clients win? It's a very sound business principle. And if you think about doing good business deals, the moment we become envious, greedy, selfish, and someone gets harmed through our kind of business, it's not sustainable. Again, Jesus Christ is the best way to do business. If you think about morality and about being the best person to find a job, again, Jesus is the best example, being truthful, being honest, being real, yet serving and loving and giving of himself for others. In every way, Jesus is our example. I want to conclude, and you can see I'm just speaking my thoughts just to give you an introduction to this book and hopefully stir some hunger in you to really dig into this word so that we can discover these wonderful truths and gold nuggets that is vested and hidden in the chapters of this book. And for me, particularly Romans 10:19. Let us therefore now come in a new and living way that he prepared for us through his body into the holies of holies. And the whole rest of that portion speaks about assurance of heart and just the honesty with which we come, full of faith. The fact that we do it together, not just singly. It's just, for me, has been a blueprint, has been a source, how can you say it? It's been a foundational reality that helped me to maneuver through the difficulties of life in a more God-pleasing way. And this is the book. This is what the book does. It gives you Jesus and puts him in context of the whole of the Old Testament history and the whole Jewish Old Testament faith. It doesn't he doesn't make all of it bad, but it gives it's like a cell phone upgrade. You really very seldomly would, once you've received a new cell phone with all kinds of new advantages and new upgrades, prefer to go and still use the old phone. We all love to find that better, the improved, and this is what Jesus really came to do: is to give us just to bring us back to the center of what God intended from the beginning. And then uncovering all these Old Testament truths and values of meaning, or wells of meaning, if you will, better word, and then unlock it by looking at Jesus Christ, him being the foundation of our faith, being the author and finisher of our faith. Hebrews 12, speaking about Jesus' own example, that he himself, being the Son, learned obedience to the things which he suffered, yet being perfected, he became the author. Hebrews 5:8. There's just so much in this book that I actually feel that you should memorize. If we could memorize almost most portions of the book, because it fundamentally earths you, it stabilizes you, it sets you in order against this world that has so much chaos and uncertainty, and then something is right, tomorrow it's wrong. It gives you a center of gravity. It gives you a sense of purpose and direction. It gives you a sense of meaning, and a noble cause meaning that's worth living and dying for. And his name is Jesus Christ. God bless you. Thank you for being part of this first lesson. And I've just been rambling my thoughts, but my idea tonight is to just get you hungry, to start reading the book. Try to read it through if you can in one session. It will take you a while, or try to read it just through. Don't make too much notes at first, just to really get a full understanding of the book. And then, as we go through the study, we're going to really dig in and uncover these majestic, beautiful truths that will settle your faith in a world of faithlessness. It will give you understanding and perspective on how to deal with life and all its difficulties in a Christ-centered way. It will center you beyond the mysticism of Christ, making Christ more visible, more understandable, until we all come to the full knowledge of Jesus Christ. And that's what the book does. It uncovers Jesus in taking all the religious filters off, so that we can see him as he truly is. And fully we will only see him as he truly is once we are united with him in the eternal. And even that you will find in this book, Hebrews. So God bless you. We'll see you next week, and have a nice read through the book, and may God settle and speak and reveal himself to you through this wonderful, beautiful book. God bless you.